some graphics, a slideshow to share just as I talk through the topic. So why don't I try to do that first? How about that? Does everybody have a good look at the main slide there? Yes?
Yes, it looks good.
Great. Okay, very good. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate that intro. So there is really no need for me to go through this particular slide. But for 30 years, I've been in consulting. Our current practice, my current practice, generates about 12 million in revenue. We consistently win seven-figure engagements, and it literally was started from nothing. Berg is extremely entrepreneurial, and it's more like a platform for new practices that have evolved over the years. It started with an actuarial pedigree, and from there grew a regulatory compliance practice, and then a state insurance filings practice. And when I came on board, I started an entirely new area, which was more akin to management consulting. So it was operational and technology consulting. In addition to the consulting work at Berg, through Super Advisors, I coach consultants both internally and externally to help them develop thriving practices or advance in their careers, depending on where they're at in their development. I've recently authored a book, The Courageous Consultant, which I encourage you to go take a look at. The challenge we all face, of course, is overcoming client skepticism when we first start to engage with folks. Consulting has become what I call, sadly, and I'm sure we can all relate to this, in some respects, a punchline profession, because so many people call themselves consultants. Consultants are people who got laid off and decide on LinkedIn that now they're a consultant. Consultants are people who don't do much at all and just need a way to justify payments to themselves. So clients are understandably skeptical. And of course, large firms have taken their time and their treasure and squandered it in many instances. The stories are legendary of the big consulting firms taking tens of millions of dollars from enterprises and having actually an opposite effect as to what was intended. So overcoming that skepticism is a big deal. We also have to resist the writing reflex, right? We're paid to give advice. We're paid to proffer our wisdom and our knowledge and our expertise and our experience. And there's almost a knee-jerk reaction in some cases to just want to help and want to offer our input and want to offer our experience. It's advisable, of course, to resist that initially in our attempt to develop trust with the client. And then finally, we want to gain client engagement. And I don't mean just getting the business, getting the work. I mean developing what David Baster has called an intimate relationship with your client, really developing a collaborative working relationship that lasts for years and years. So why coaching? I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, are familiar with coaching, but this definition from the ICF, the International Coaching Federation, is instructive because they define it as partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. And I've highlighted the words there: partnering, thought-provoking, creative, inspires, maximize potential, because they're easily translatable to the consulting world. Imagine partnering with your client. Imagine always having thought-provoking discussions, being creative, being inspirational. These are things that your clients are longing for in their relationships with professional service providers that are unfortunately too rare. How do we coach? We ask powerful questions. So we define powerful questions by saying that we acknowledge the client's expertise. We don't go in there wielding our sword and our shield and pretend to know more than they do. They will always know more than you do about their business. So we need to respect that naturally. The goal of the questions that we ask should be to move them forward, not lament the mistakes of the past or the projects that failed, but to really get them forward-looking and forward-moving toward the realization of specific objectives. We want to empower our clients to act. We want to give them the tools and the techniques, the encouragement to act when we offer them our interventions. And then importantly, the client sets the agenda. It's far more beneficial in developing a trusting relationship to let the client, of course, tell you what they want to cover and what they would like to accomplish in their discussions with you. And one of the great techniques that I've discovered that I'm applying in my consulting work is motivational interviewing. So motivational interviewing was founded, if you will, by two psychologists about 40 years ago, William Miller and Stephen Rolnick. And they started with with their addiction recovery practice, it was actually. And they found that when they were directive toward addicts, when they were telling them what to do, or they were telling them, you know, how they might die, or giving them worst case scenarios, they got resistance, they got pushback, and they were ineffective. And they found when they empowered the addict, when they had the addict actually work together with them to come up with solutions and strategies for curing their addictions, they were far, far more effective. So motivational interviewing spans, when you approach your conversations, 4 areas of engagement, I'll call it. The first is engaging, the second is focusing, third is evoking, and the fourth is planning. And we'll go through each of these in turn and share with you some example questions as you move through each of these phases in working with your clients. So the engaging phase is really to start developing that trusting relationship. And this is where you ask questions like, where are you succeeding? What do you know about our work? Where are you challenged? And this question I find to be really powerful. How do you think we can help you? You know, not I'm a great consultant, not I have done business process improvement engagements for the last 30 years. How do you think we can help? Very powerful question. You're demonstrating genuine interest in what they have to say right off the bat. And again, it's not a time to be directive. You're listening 80% of the time, and you're listening specifically for desire, their desire to do something, their ability to do something, reasons that they may have to do that, and specifically the need that they have. The focus, again, is on goals and importance, what's most important to them, and their expectations in working with you. As we leave the engagement phase, we get involved with focusing. So here our goal is to collaborate to define desired outcomes and find a mutually agreeable direction. This is where we really start to bring the client to the engagement, bring them into kind of the, again, we're not saying here's our 5-part methodology. We're bringing them into the engagement collaboratively to find out what's most important to them and to their organization, what outcome they expect from working together. How will they work together? What would this mean? Another powerful, powerful question. What would this mean to your company if you're successful with this particular intervention? And of course, what will it cost you if you do nothing? These are just purely coaching questions. The goal here is to get that problem defined concisely. This is that Einstein thing. You know, if I had an hour to save the world, I'd spend 59 minutes defining the problem and a minute on the solution. These are those 59 minutes, and it's important to take time and really dig and collaborate with your client. Finally, we zero in on a single priority. We can't, as we all love to say in the consulting world, we can't boil the ocean. So we start with one thing. We take that first step. Once we navigate through that phase, we get into evoking. And this is kind of where the rubber meets the road. This is where you're starting to problem solve. This is where you engage your client to tap into their knowledge, their experience, their expertise. You're respecting them. This is completely counterintuitive to those of us who give advice for a living. What ideas do you have to address the situation? What resources can you bring to bear? What have you seen work in the past that we can apply in this situation? If they say nothing, you say, well, if you were forced to come up with one idea, what would it be? And what would you do if you couldn't fail? Again, these are pure coaching questions that are incredibly effective when you're getting your client engaged and gaining their trust. You start with possibilities and brainstorming. And importantly, and this is again borrowed from David Maister in his book, The Trusted Advisor, ask permission to give advice. May I offer you a suggestion? Can I offer some experience that I've had in the past? Not coming at them with guns blazing, saying, I've done this before. Oh, I've seen this problem before. Oh, I can help you. Do you mind if I offer you my advice? Very, very key question. And then finally, once you gain that permission and you've brainstormed through the advice giving and you brainstorm through a potential solution set, you can start planning. So you must ascertain that the client's ready to move into this phase. And this is where you're asking, this is qualifying, right? 101. What are you willing to commit now? What's an agreeable first step? When can you assemble your team so we can start working together? What's your time frame and what are you willing to invest? If the client doesn't appear to be ready at this stage, if they're balking or they're hesitating, go back to one of the other phases. Go back and start evoking new ideas from them. Go back and help them refocus on the priorities, or go back all the way to the beginning and start re-engaging with them. There's no need to rush, and obviously rushing is inadvisable if you're trying to build a trusting relationship. Now, what happens when you do this? What happens when you have tossed the ball to your client and you're showing them the respect that they deserve? They've built a business. They've risen in the ranks in their organization. They've done some things in their lives that have put them in a position to hire you. So what does that do? Well, it satisfies their psychological needs. So this is another idea borrowed from the world of psychology. And this is Ed Deci and Richard Ryan are the two psychologists who devised this, again, about 30 or 40 years ago. And through more than 1,000 studies in workplaces, in schools, in churches, Deci and Ryan have determined that these three psychological needs, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, when they're met, create a greater sense of engagement. So employees in the workplace, when they have autonomy, feel competent or relatedness, and likewise your clients, if you are, again, tossing the ball to them and they're setting the agenda, you're providing an autonomy supportive environment for you to have a discussion in. If you're respecting their knowledge and their experience, you're providing a competence supportive environment. You're respecting their competence. You're not coming in and saying, I know more than you. And then finally, relatedness. Well, relatedness is simply that idea of purpose that has been popularized in so many recent business books. Simon Sinek's Finding Your Why, notably Daniel Pink's Drive, borrows exactly from this. Daniel Pink, instead of autonomy, competence, and relatedness, Daniel Pink says autonomy, mastery, and purpose. But it's the same thing. It's the same idea. And poor Deci and Ryan are a mere footnote in his book Drive. But it's their idea. So when you meet those psychological needs, you get client engagement. Client engagement, of course, breeds trust. This is what we're after. We want a bona fide, trusting relationship. You know, it was telling, I did a search on the term trusted advisor in LinkedIn, in quotes, 169,000 results came back. And then I just pared it down to trusted advisor for people who had the keywords consultant or management consultant in their profile. And it was still 3,000 people think it's okay in their profile to say, I'm a trusted advisor. And it's not okay to say you're a trusted advisor. You don't decide that you're a trusted advisor. Your client decides that you're a trusted advisor. So you build that trust and you have that relationship. They've been involved. It's been collaborative. So you gain that buy-in, that all-important buy-in. So your report doesn't sit on the shelf. So you haven't wasted their time or your time or their money. And you have greater impact. You have impact and the client has impact. So now you're satisfying that need for relatedness, that purpose. They're serving something larger than themselves and they're being acknowledged for it. And when that happens, the cycle continues. Trust is reinforced. There's greater buy-in. And the impact, of course, is enhanced. And you kind of set up this virtuous circle, if you will. So key takeaways here. Number one, to bring coaching to your consulting work, ask powerful questions and listen more than you speak. Again, it's counterintuitive for a lot of consultants. They like to get in the room in front of the whiteboard and go on and on and on about what they know and what they've done and how they can help. It should be 80-20. 80% you're listening and 20% you're talking. And have the client set the agenda. Second key takeaway, acknowledge that your clients are the real experts. Again, you'll never know as much about their business as they do. And resist the urge to have all the answers. We like to say in the coaching world, walk alongside your client. You know, it's a peer-to-peer relationship. And then finally, a coaching approach breeds far greater engagement and instills trust and sets off that virtuous circle that yields buy-in and impact. If you're interested in reading more and diving deep, there are a couple of academics on the call here this afternoon. The book Motivational Interviewing by Miller and Rolnick is a gem, highly recommended. The book Self-Determination Theory by Ryan and DC is another gem. They go very, very deep into those topics. And then no consultant worth their salt would miss an opportunity to self-promote. So the Courageous Consultant touches on some of these ideas and quite a few others that I've applied in my development of a fairly large consulting practice. Additional resources, there's a course on motivational interviewing. It's a few $100s on the website PsychWire. It's actually taught by Miller and Rolnick. Richard Ryan teaches Introduction to Self-Determination Theory on Coursera. If you visit Super Advisors, I'll give you half off my book. Use the code IMCNOW21. So you'll get it for $10. If you go to Amazon, it's $20. And of course, if you just want to chat, say hello, my email address is rberg@superadvisors.com. And with that, I will open the floor to questions.